Did you get a chance to watch both games last night to kind of figure out who you guys would end up playing Saturday?
Yeah, I did. I managed to see quite a bit of both. I started watching the Carolina game for obvious reasons, top seed and at home. But quickly realised that was going to be a very tight game, and of course it went against them. So managed to see a reasonable amount of the other game. Listen, then, understandably so. They're both, competing. Both teams competing in both games for the right to come into the playoff as a whole, and they're both really competitive games.
What did you see from the Ottawa and the Charleston game? Did anything come to mind in terms of something new or something different that you didn't see throughout the regular season?
Well, not really, no. There's been very little to choose between a lot of teams, especially the sides that are in the top 10. On any given day, I think any team can take any particular game. As far as now looking at Charleston, who were able to overcome Ottawa, I think you're seeing all of the characteristics that you've seen in the past from Charleston teams. Mike does a wonderful job and has done. I think he's made every postseason. Did I read somewhere? It's a great stat. It's not as if they're a side that maintain continuity every year. There's a lot of turnover of players. His recruitment's excellent, and they themselves emulate. I think the coach. He's very well organised. They're very disciplined. They're not just competitive. They have a nice dimension to them. In Lewis, Higashi. You look at guys like Daly coming into the group and not played loads, but we fell foul of some of his exploits in the Open Cup. A lot of pace. They've got some really nice dimensions, and what we know is we've had some very, very tough games against them, and I expect it will be exactly the same at the weekend.
Does it give you a little bit of, maybe hearten you a little bit to know that they are coming off 120 minutes out of the country and have to travel and all those sorts of things?
Yeah, would I like to be where we are? Yeah, of course. It gives us a little bit more time to prepare. Yes, they'll have more travel, and I'm sure there'll be some sort of fatigue set in. But I think when the guys or those guys finally get to the weekend and put all of that out of their mind, he has the ability to rotate a few players. They've got a competitive group, and I think whoever comes in and plays in whatever style he chooses to play, they'll go about their business. They always do. They're not an easy touch for anyone. What we have to try and inject into the game is the type of attitude and cup competition mentality that we have over the last 2 or 3 games. If we can start off brightly and get ourselves into a nice rhythm and groove, then we've proved that we're as tough as any team as well.
This will be the 4th time you've played Charleston this season, and obviously you played Cincinnati 4 times last season. Do you feel like that amount of matches against your playoff opponent helps or hurts your preparation?
It's the same for both teams. They'll have a good insight into how we play. They'll know some of our players. Forrest has played for Charleston, so there'll be no secrets between the two teams. It really is about in the postseason, and it is cup competition. There's no way of recovering in the course of 34 games. You're in or you're out. It's the guys that apply themselves properly. They've kept some sort of professionalism about their play. They've got to play in control, because otherwise you run the risk that there are other extenuating circumstances that can affect the game. And to show the sort of form, which is why we wanted to finish the season well. Every team does, but we're in a good place. Players are confident, they've got momentum, and those little nuances and those details can be the difference in big games like this between winning and losing.
As you'd expect, at the end of every week, not just the playoffs, but regular season too, a lot more competition as you go to the end of the week. What's the breakdown now that you do have your opponent, it's Charleston? What's the breakdown of this training session, and possibly even tomorrow as well?
Well, today's always a big day. Looking at 11v11 play, trying to just pick out some of the characteristics of their team. That we might be able to take a little bit more advantage of. B, that we need to be mindful of and careful of. When all said and done, they're a difficult side to break down. When they choose to be stout and in our game plan right, and making sure that the players are fully appreciative of how they need to start the game, what little things we're after in those opening exchanges, how we tend to manage the game or intend to, and of course what difficulties we could run into and to be ready for.
It looks like it's going to be 55 and rainy when you play. Just knowing that it's going to be a wet surface, does that change anything in terms of preparation, or not really?
I think the players would be happy about that. You know, we're at that time of year anyway where the climate's changed quite dramatically. The temperature's dropped. It makes the game quicker. It'll make it more competitive for sure. It'll probably lend itself to being even more so in a professional mindset and not getting too overzealous with challenges or the way that you try and impose yourself. But when all said and done, there'll be 11 players on the field, the 10 outfield on each side. We'll understand the nature of what we're in. There'll be, I'm sure, some very strong challenges, and there'll also be some very good football. Both sides are really capable.
You've had a strong run of home form to close out the year. How important is it to kind of get that sort of support, especially in cup competition where it's single elimination game here at First Tennessee Park?
I do think that the running has been very helpful for us. I know we played at Nissan Stadium against Carolina, but I think it helps the continuity of the week. It's not just the match day. You get into a rhythm of how you're working, times, what you're trying to get out of each session, whereas when you're travelling, it can just put you out your stride a little bit. The guys have been used to staying in their own bed and preparing in their own way at home and then being here at a particular time. The fact that we get the chance to play in front of our own fans, and of course everyone's hoping that first playoff game in club history at home brings the supporters out in their droves, because when this place has got a good crowd in it and some noise, it's as good as any. You know, there's a lovely atmosphere. It'll drive the players on. It inspires what will already be a particularly competitive game, but I just think it'll give it that extra cup edge.
This club is going to be vastly different in about a year's time, obviously, with Major League Soccer
Before
coming
a year.
to the place. Or before that, certainly
It'll probably be in about 3 or 4 months.
Perhaps. Do you see anything different in terms of the mental, the attitude and the way that your players are coming to training and how they're preparing for this game, knowing that this is, from now on out, here on out, this is, win or go home?
We've contended with the MLS, if you like, shadow behind us all year. So the players knew from the very outset that they were going to be in the best possible position to show what they're about and be in front of the coaching staff, myself, who's going to be moving forward with the MLS group. We've had periods in the season where particular players have been disappointed and frustrated when they feel as though they're on the outside looking in. We've had periods of the season where those same players are now back in the frame and they realise that there were 2 jobs going on this year. The first one was to be as competitive as we can as a functioning side, but secondly, to make sure not that everyone got the best possible opportunity, but that the competition was good enough to be able to rotate the team and certainly to give them a fair crack at a whip. So there's been loads of emotions. I think we've come through all of those, and we're at a point in the season, and I think you saw that maybe 4 or 5 games ago, where everyone went from, okay, maybe I'm not sure, maybe I am sure in my mind where I sit in the grand scheme of things, but I'm now going to roll my sleeves up and we're going to get on with the business in hand, which is to finish the season off well and to achieve what we can, and maybe something that some players will never have the chance to do again, which is to win a championship. I don't know where people will go or what they will do. What I do know is that this group throughout has conducted themselves fantastically. As far as I'm concerned, day to day, they've been extremely professional, they've worked hard, they've never ever shown on the field that there's any issues, even if they did have some off the field. We've contended with injuries and to some very influential players, and we've always been able to go about our business in a very competitive fashion. And we're at a point where all of these guys now see, in the team or out of it, that I'm part of something quite special. And when I look back on this, whether I'm here or whether I'm somewhere else, that it's going to be something I remember with fond memories.
Do you feel like those past 4 or 5 games that you mentioned has been I guess the increased success of the team is kind of from a little bit less of having some of the guys splitting their focus, worrying about MLS versus just saying, let's get out and get the job done?
Maybe. Yeah, maybe. I would, if you ask those players, I bet they've all gone through a particular period where they felt as though they were out of my plans and therefore out of the future plans. And that was the connection. They always looked and felt as though if they weren't in the team, because I was moving forward, they were out of the plans completely, which wasn't ever the case. You know, I've had 2 jobs to try and do. I think we've done a very good job to date as a functioning team, as I've said. And as we move forward, we'll certainly find out what players make that jump and who can be part of the next part of our history and who won't be. But that won't be for a little while yet, hopefully. And when it does come around, I don't think any of them can look back and say either they weren't able to show what they were about, or they weren't functioning as a group in the right way, because that's as big as anything. If you're not working as a group, how does any one individual show what they're about? So there was quite a lot to contend with early on, and it's not a shock that, you know, for some guys it was quite difficult to maybe wrap their heads around. I know it was for me early on, running 2 teams or trying to build the foundations of one and work day on day with the other.
Do you think that, based off of what you described in terms of how the players have approached the season, do you think that the energy or the urgency that they have as players has remained high but been even, or do you think that it's increased because of the playoffs?
Oh, I think we've certainly shifted into a new gear. The last 3 games at home, we always highlighted as an opportunity, come what may, once we'd qualified for the playoffs, to say, look, the only way that we can prepare for this, in our way, is to try and create the environment and atmosphere that you're going to see come post-season. The fact that those games were in conjunction with chasing for the Eastern Conference regular season title just added to that. It was another dimension to the running that I think gave the players a little bit more of a shot in the arm and, you know, a bit more passion to their game. But that's lent itself nicely to what we're now going to see.